I walked out of my own wedding after my fiancée laughed while her rich family mocked my working-class mom. No regrets. I'm 28, and 3 weeks ago I was supposed to get married. Instead, I walked out of my own wedding with my mom and haven't looked back since. People keep asking what happened, so I figured I'd share the whole story here. Maybe it'll help someone else recognize the red flags I missed. My name's Roman, and I was raised by my mom, Elena, after my dad left when I was 8. She worked double shifts as a nurse to keep us afloat, picked up weekend shifts at a clinic, and somehow still made it to every school event that mattered. We weren't rich, but we had each other, and that felt like enough. Growing up, I watched her sacrifice everything for me. She drove a beat-up Toyota for 15 years because my college fund came first. She wore the same winter coat for a decade because my textbooks mattered more. When I graduated with my engineering degree, she cried harder than I did. She'd earned that moment just as much as I had. After college, I landed a decent job at a manufacturing firm. Nothing glamorous, but steady work with good benefits. I moved us into a nicer apartment, bought Mom a reliable car, and started feeling like maybe I could finally give back after all she'd done. Life was simple, predictable, and honest. That's when I met Kiara. It was at a company mixer about 2.5 years ago. She was there with a friend who worked in our accounting department. Kiara was stunning, confident, and had this way of making everyone in the room feel like they were the most interesting person she'd ever met. When she focused that attention on me, I was completely hooked. She worked in marketing for a high-end jewelry company, drove a BMW, and lived in one of those trendy downtown lofts with exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows. Her world was wine tastings and weekend trips to the mountains, boutique shopping and restaurants I'd never heard of. It felt exciting, like stepping into someone else's life. Our first few months were incredible. She was adventurous, spontaneous, always planning something new. She'd text me at work suggesting we drive to the coast for dinner, or surprise me with tickets to concerts I didn't even know were happening. I felt like I was finally living instead of just surviving. But there were moments, little things that didn't quite sit right. Like when she'd suggest restaurants that cost more than my mom spent on groceries in a week, then get annoyed when I'd counter with somewhere more reasonable. Or how she'd roll her eyes when I mentioned visiting Mom on Sunday afternoons, calling it cute that I was so devoted. The first time I took her to meet Mom, I was nervous but excited. I wanted the two most important women in my life to connect. Mom had spent the whole day cooking, cleaning the apartment until it sparkled, and she'd even bought a new dress for the occasion. She was so proud to meet the girl who'd made her son smile the way I'd been smiling. Kiara was polite that day, but distant. She complimented Mom's cooking, made appropriate small talk, and smiled at all the right moments. But I could see her taking everything in with these calculating eyes. The second-hand furniture, the small kitchen, the family photos in drugstore frames. She wasn't cruel, but she wasn't warm either. On the drive home, she was quiet for a long time before saying, "Your mom's sweet. The apartment's very cozy." That pause before cozy told me everything I needed to know about what she really thought. Over the next year, things got more serious between us, but the subtle digs at my background never stopped. She'd joke about my blue-collar roots in front of her friends, or make comments about how refreshing it was to date someone so down-to-earth. It always felt like she was simultaneously praising and patronizing me. Her family was old money. Not billionaire rich, but the kind of wealthy that's been around for generations. Her father, Richard, owned a chain of luxury car dealerships. Her mother, Victoria, sat on charity boards and organized fundraisers for causes she'd never personally experienced. They lived in a mansion in the hills with a circular driveway and actual columns. The first time I met them, I knew I was being evaluated. Richard's handshake was firm but brief, Victoria's smile was perfectly practiced, and their questions felt like a job interview. What did I do for work? Where did I go to school? What were my prospects? They were polite, but I could feel them categorizing me as temporary. Kiara seemed different around her family. More reserved, more conscious of appearances. She'd correct my grammar or change the subject when I talked about work. Once, when I mentioned helping Mom with some home repairs, Victoria made a comment about how handy I was, like I was the family contractor rather than her daughter's boyfriend. But Kiara and I had good times too. Really good times. When it was just us, she could be funny, thoughtful, and genuinely caring. She remembered details about my day, encouraged me when work got stressful, and had this laugh that made everything else fade away. I convinced myself that her family's attitude didn't matter because she chose me over their expectations. After 18 months together, I started thinking about proposing. I'd been saving for months, researching rings, imagining our future together. Kiera had been dropping hints about friends' engagements, sharing wedding photos on social media, talking about venues she'd visited for other people's events. It felt like the natural next step. I planned it perfectly, or so I thought. A weekend trip to the mountains, a hike to a scenic overlook, a sunset proposal with a ring I'd spent 3 months' salary on. She said yes, cried, called her parents immediately. For a moment, everything felt exactly right. But the wedding planning process revealed things about Kiera I'd either missed or ignored. Her vision for our wedding was elaborate, expensive, and completely outside my budget. When I suggested scaling back, she'd get frustrated and remind me that this was our one day, and we should do it right. Her parents offered to help pay, which should have been generous, but it came with conditions. They wanted to approve the venue, the caterer, the guest list, the music. Victoria started making comments about the type of people who would be attending from my side, wondering if they'd be comfortable at such an upscale event. The worst part was watching Kiera navigate these conversations. She never directly agreed with her parents' subtle insults, but she never defended my family either. She'd just laugh awkwardly and change the subject, leaving their words hanging in the air like smoke. My mom was so excited about the wedding. She'd been planning her outfit for months, talking about how proud she was, how happy she was to see me settled with someone I loved. She even offered to help with costs, which broke my heart because I knew she didn't have money to spare. The rehearsal dinner was the first real warning sign I should have paid attention to. It was held at an exclusive country club, white tablecloths and crystal glasses, the kind of place where the waitstaff wore gloves. My side of the family looked uncomfortable from the moment we walked in, but they were trying their best. Mom had bought a new dress, navy blue with small flowers, and she looked beautiful. But sitting at that table surrounded by Kiera's relatives in their designer clothes and expensive jewelry, I could see her shrinking into herself. She barely spoke during dinner, just smiled politely and answered direct questions. Richard made a toast that night that stuck with me. He talked about how proud they were of Kiera, how she'd always had excellent judgment, and how they knew she'd chosen well. But the way he said it, looking directly at me, felt more like a challenge than a compliment. Like he was saying they'd accepted me, but barely. After dinner, I overheard Victoria talking to Kiera's aunt about the wedding. "It's not what I would have chosen," she said, "but Kiera seems happy. And he does seem devoted. Sometimes that's enough." The dismissal in her voice made my stomach turn, but again, Kiera was right there and said nothing. The morning of the wedding, I was nervous but excited. I barely slept, kept thinking about seeing Kiera in her dress, about dancing together, about starting our life as husband and wife. My mom had tears in her eyes when she saw me in my tux. "Your father would be so proud," she whispered, adjusting my tie. The ceremony was beautiful, everything Kiera had dreamed of. The venue was a historic mansion with gardens and a fountain, flowers everywhere, a string quartet playing as guests arrived. I felt like we were in a movie, like nothing could go wrong. But during the cocktail hour before the reception, something shifted. Kiera's family had been drinking, and their usual polite restraint was starting to slip. I was talking with some of my co-workers when I heard laughter from across the patio. Loud, harsh laughter that made me look up. Victoria was in the center of a small group that included Richard, Kiera's cousin Salma, and a few family friends. They were looking in my mom's direction, and even from a distance, I could tell the conversation wasn't friendly. I made my way over, trying to look casual, but my heart was already racing. As I got closer, I could hear fragments of what they were saying. "Nurse's uniform to a wedding," Salma was saying with a smirk. Did someone tell her this was a costume party? My blood went cold. Mom wasn't wearing a nurse's uniform. She was wearing that navy blue dress with the small flowers, the one she'd been so excited about. But I guess to them, anything that didn't cost more than a car payment looked like work clothes. "Oh, that's not fair," Victoria said with fake concern. "I'm sure she did her best. It's not her fault she doesn't understand dress codes for events like this." Richard chuckled. "Roman seems like a good kid, but you can tell he comes from limited circumstances. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, does it? I just hope he can keep up, another voice added. Kiara's used to a certain standard of living. It would be sad to see her have to lower her expectations. I stood there frozen, watching them dissect my family like we were specimens under a microscope. But what shattered me wasn't their cruelty. It was seeing Kiara standing right there in the circle, champagne glass in her hand, laughing along with them. She wasn't just staying silent this time. She was participating. When Salma made another crack about my mom's appearance, Kiara actually giggled and added, "Well, at least she's consistent." That's when something inside me broke. Not just my heart, but my faith in the person I thought I was marrying. This woman I'd been planning to spend my life with was standing there mocking the woman who'd sacrificed everything to raise me, and she thought it was funny. I walked directly into their circle. "Excuse me," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I couldn't help but overhear your conversation about my mother." The laughter stopped immediately. Victoria looked embarrassed, Richard cleared his throat, and Salma suddenly found her drink very interesting. But Kiara just looked annoyed, like I'd interrupted something private. "Roman," she said with a forced smile. "We were just what?" I interrupted. "Just making fun of the woman who worked 60-hour weeks to put me through college? The woman who hasn't bought herself a new dress in 3 years because she wanted to contribute to our wedding fund." The silence was deafening. Other guests were starting to notice the tension, conversations around us trailing off as people turned to stare. "You think her dress isn't expensive enough for your standards?" I continued, my voice getting louder. "You think she doesn't belong here because she didn't spend a month's rent on an outfit she'll wear once?" "Now hold on," Richard started, but I wasn't done. "That woman taught me what real class looks like. It's not about money or designer labels. It's about treating people with dignity and respect, something you all seem to have forgotten." I looked directly at Kiara, and for the first time in our relationship, I saw her clearly. Not the woman I'd fallen in love with, not the person I'd imagined spending my life with, but someone who valued appearances more than character, status more than substance. "And you," I said to her. "You stood there and laughed. You know everything about my mom, about what she's done for me, about what she means to me. And you laughed." Kiara's face went white. "Roman, please, let's not do this here." "No," I said firmly. "We are doing this here. Because this is who you really are. This is who your family is. And I won't be part of it." I started walking toward the reception hall where I knew Mom was waiting, probably wondering why the wedding party was delayed. Behind me, I could hear Kiara calling my name, her voice getting desperate, but I didn't turn around. I found Mom sitting at a table near the back, smoothing her dress nervously and checking her watch. She looked up when she saw me approaching, and her smile faded immediately when she saw my expression. "Roman? Honey, what's wrong?" I sat down beside her and took her hands. They were shaking slightly, and I realized she'd probably been anxious all day, trying to fit in with people who'd made it clear she didn't belong. "Mom," I said quietly, "how would you feel about leaving here with me right now?" Her eyes widened. "Leave? But the reception, your wedding." "There's not going to be a reception," I said. "Or a wedding. Not today, not ever." I told her what I'd overheard, watched her face crumple with hurt and embarrassment. But then something else appeared in her expression, relief. Like she'd been holding her breath for months and could finally exhale. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. But are you sure? This is such a big decision." "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," I said. "You're the most important person in my world. Anyone who can't see your worth, who thinks you're anything less than extraordinary, doesn't deserve to be in our lives." Mom started crying then, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of pride, of gratitude, of pure love. We sat there holding hands while chaos erupted around us. Kiara appeared at our table, still in her wedding dress, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "Roman, please. We can work this out." They didn't mean anything by it. It was just stupid small talk. I stood up slowly, looked at this woman I'd thought I wanted to marry, and felt nothing but pity. "No, Kiara. It wasn't small talk. It was who you are. Who they are. And I'm not interested in spending my life trying to prove my worth to people who will never see it." "But what about us?" she pleaded. What about everything we planned? What about my mom? I countered. What about the fact that you stood there and participated while your family tore her apart? What about the fact that in 2.5 years, you never once stood up for the people I love? She didn't have an answer for that. Maybe because there wasn't one. I helped Mom gather her purse, offered her my arm, and we walked out together. Past the shocked guests, past the beautiful decorations, past the life I'd thought I wanted. With every step, I felt lighter. The aftermath was brutal in some ways. I had to deal with canceling vendors, returning gifts, explaining to friends and family what had happened. Some people thought I'd overreacted, that I should have tried to work things out. Others understood completely. My coworker Dave, whose wife had set up the original meeting with Kiera, apologized profusely. I never would have introduced you if I'd known what her family was like, he said. I only met her a few times, always thought she seemed nice. The hardest part was the financial hit. I'd put deposits down on everything, most of which were non-refundable. The ring was a total loss since Kiera refused to give it back, claiming I'd abandoned her. But you know what? It was worth every penny to learn who she really was before I legally tied myself to her. Kiera tried reaching out for weeks afterward. Texts, calls, emails, even showing up at my apartment once. She kept insisting it was all a misunderstanding, that her family had just been nervous and said things they didn't mean. But I knew the truth. People don't become cruel when they're nervous. They just stop hiding who they really are. The most telling thing was that she never once apologized for laughing along. Never acknowledged that her behavior was wrong. It was always about me overreacting, about salvaging the situation, about getting back to normal. But normal was the problem. Normal was her family looking down on mine, and her being okay with that. Mom and I have grown even closer since everything happened. She keeps apologizing for ruining my wedding, which breaks my heart because she didn't ruin anything. She revealed something that needed to be revealed. She showed me what real love looks like compared to conditional acceptance. We've started doing more things together. Sunday dinners became Saturday adventures. We've gone hiking, visited museums, taken a weekend trip to see her sister in Portland. She started dating again, actually, a guy named Dustin who works at the hardware store and treats her like she's the most fascinating woman he's ever met. Because she is. I've been single for 3 months now, and I'm not in any hurry to change that. I'm focusing on work, on spending time with people who matter, on figuring out what I actually want in a partner versus what I thought I wanted. The experience taught me something important about love and respect. Real love doesn't laugh when someone attacks the people you care about. Real love doesn't ask you to choose between your family and your future. Real love doesn't require you to prove your worth over and over again. I know I made the right choice that day. Walking away from Kiera wasn't just about protecting my mom's dignity, though that was huge. It was about protecting my own. It was about refusing to spend my life apologizing for where I came from or trying to earn acceptance from people whose approval meant nothing to me. Some people have asked if I regret not trying to work things out, if I think I acted too hastily. But honestly, I wish I'd walked away sooner. I wish I'd trusted my instincts when I first noticed how differently Kiera acted around her family. I wish I'd paid more attention to the way she never defended me or mine when it mattered. Looking back, the red flags were everywhere. The subtle condescension, the way she'd changed the subject when I talked about my background, the way she never seemed comfortable in my world but expected me to adapt perfectly to hers. I ignored them because I was in love with the idea of her, with the life she represented, with the person I thought I could become by association. But here's what I learned. You can't build a real relationship on the foundation of someone being ashamed of who you are. You can't create lasting love with someone who sees your family as a problem to be managed rather than people to be embraced. My mom raised me to believe that character matters more than wealth, that dignity isn't for sale, and that the people who love you should never ask you to be smaller so they can feel bigger. Kiera and her family forgot those lessons, if they ever learned them at all. 3 months later, I'm not bitter. I'm grateful. Grateful that I found out who Kiera really was before I signed legal documents. Grateful that my mom got to see me choose her when it mattered most. Grateful that I still have my integrity and my family, even if I don't have a wife. The right person is out there somewhere, someone who will see my mom's strength and resilience and be inspired by it. Someone who will understand that the woman who raised me is a reflection of the man I became. Someone who won't need me to prove my worth because they'll recognize it from the start. Until then, I'm good. Mom and I are good. And that's more than enough. For anyone reading this who sees similarities to their own situation, trust your instincts. If your partner's family treats your family poorly, and your partner doesn't stand up for you, that tells you everything you need to know about your future together. Don't ignore red flags hoping they'll go away. They won't. They'll just get bigger and more expensive to ignore. You deserve someone who's proud to be with you, not someone who tolerates you despite your background. You deserve someone who sees your family's love and sacrifices and feels honored to be part of that story, not someone who sees them as obstacles to overcome. Most importantly, you deserve someone who will stand beside you when it matters most, not someone who will laugh along when you're under attack. I chose my mom's honor over a marriage built on shame, and I'd make the same choice 1,000 times over. Some things are worth more than a wedding, and self-respect is definitely one of them.